Hey there everyone, this is Mystic Fish. Welcome to episode 97 of our Factorio Space Age playthrough where we're working on upgradable bases. Last episode, before we get into what we're going to do today, last episode we set up a way to make uncommon jelly fruit. And I said at the end of that episode that I was going to work on doing the same thing for Yamako. And so I did get started. I've got all of the ag towers laid out and all of the necessary artificial soil laid out around them as well. But one of the things that I found as I was extending the walls and the Roboport networks were like, I definitely, and we saw this a little bit in the last episode, I ran into some like power death spirals. And I was like, you know what, like I really am tired of that. And so I took a little side quest here to just make very reliable power. And so I've already built it. So this may be just a relatively quick episode of going over exactly what was built. But the general idea is to produce power in such a way that we're not actually dependent on the power that's being produced to produce power, if that makes sense. And so that's what I've set up here. So it starts out with a solar panel grid here, and the only thing that this is responsible for powering is this ag tower and this little setup here. And so, as you can see, this is like only produces 1.4 megawatts of solar power, but because it's solar and accumulators, like it's fine. That's actually all that, we don't have a lot going on here. It looks like only about 300 kilowatts. So this is fine for producing this. And the main job of this thing is to produce a little bit of steam power. Not a lot, just a little bit. So in this case, what we're doing is we're basically, we have an assembly machine because that can run off of the solar power, and we don't need nutrients for it in particular. So this makes for a very simple setup. And we have a little bit of productivity module in here, and all we're doing is basically making jelly and seeds. And so the seeds just go back here to be filled up in here. As you can see, it takes a little bit to actually build up a full set of jelly fruit seeds here. But over time, and we only have like a little bit of a productivity boost here, right? Plus, 0.8%. Plus 8%. So this is very slowly generates seeds, but on average it will produce more seeds than we consume with this. And then the jelly is just coming over here. All the jelly is just getting dumped in here to keep this thing hot, this heating tower. And so if you take a look at this, this is 2.91 jelly per second is what's getting produced here. 1 cube of jelly has 1 megajoule of fuel value. And so you can think of it as this is producing 2.91 megawatts worth of jelly. Then the heating tower, because it has efficiency 250%, will turn the 2.91 megawatts of jelly into an effective 7 point something. I forget exactly what it works out to. But in any event, it's not, it's certainly not everything this is capable of consuming. Right? This can consume 16 megawatts. We're only feeding it a little under 3. But the 7 or so megawatts that we're producing on a continuous basis is enough for 1 heat exchanger, and then it's slightly more than 1 steam turbine. And so the main point here is that this produces on this network, and you can see these networks are not connected, which we can see on the map view. Let me get the map. Oh, I was in map. Okay, sorry. Oh, here, we could see it here. Right, here's the solar panel, and you can see it just, that network doesn't touch anything. It just powers the ag tower and the assembly machine. And then this is a separate network over here that does some other stuff, which I'll talk about. And so this other one here, you can see right now, I mean, the two steam turbines are capable of producing almost 12 megawatts. We know that we're only getting 7, but we're also not consuming that much. We're only consuming 1.2, which would strain the solar version of this. But I feel like it's just a little easier to do it this way. Plus, this guy will build up over time a little stash of seeds. So the other thing that I wanted was I wanted there to be no reliance on any bots for this. Okay, so just briefly talking about circuit network and stuff. What we have here is we have set filters. So by default, any spoilage and jelly goes straight into here to be burned, regardless. And we also burn anything that's on this belt that is not a jelly fruit, jelly nut. And so if anything for some reason happens to spoil here, we can burn it and get the jelly nuts in. Let's see. Then we're looking at the temperature here, and we are looking. So we have this. There's a steel box right there. And that we're looking at on the green wire here. And so what we're basically saying is, when do we want to call for jelly nuts? Because those are, that's going to come on the red wire here, and that's what's driving whether the agricultural tower is active or not, is do we need jelly nuts put onto this belt here? And so the two conditions are either that the temperature has fallen, or that we have not built up sort of the full complement of seeds that we want. But in either case, we want to, this red wire here is just looking at everything that's on this belt. So we're basically also saying we need to process a jelly nut either because we want more temperature for electricity production, or we want to generate more seeds. And we don't really have jelly nuts on the belt. And in that case, then we'll say, hey, please put some jelly nuts on the belt. And then I think there's one more here, which is that we're going to look at how many jelly nuts we have in the box. We're going to subtract 100 because I want to have 100 in the box. And so in this case, it's negative, so nothing happens. But once we have more than 100 in the box, we'll have some positive value come out on the jelly nut signal. This guy does set filters, and so then in that case, once we have enough seeds, if we generate seeds, we'll just burn them, which I think is fine. Okay, so that's what's going on here. And then so another way of thinking about this is the only job of this solar array is to power this sort of like bootstrap power, this sort of like jelly power here. And the only job of the jelly power is to power the like better power, which is this thing over here, which is basically making and burning rocket fuel, because that's sort of the most efficient power generation that we have available to us. And so that whole thing, the production of it is being driven here, and it's consuming, as we can see, 1.4, 1.3 megawatts, something like that. So this bootstrap jelly power is definitely enough to keep the rocket fuel power running. And as you can see, this is the steam turbines of the jelly power, and so that runs over here. It powers all of the build that we have here, it comes all the way over here. It does not connect to this network here. That's the main sort of base network. But it comes down here and it powers this agricultural tower over here that's getting Yamakos. And it comes over here and it powers this agricultural tower here, which is doing jelly nuts. Because we need both jelly nuts and Yamakos in order to make the rocket fuel. So that's what this build here is doing. And let's see, some parts of this should look familiar. One is we have a way to bootstrap nutrient production. Because these are assembly machines, they don't need nutrients to run. So as long as we feed them Yamakos, we can generate mash, which is good stuff. And then so the mash comes over here. We can we've stored up, in this case, a fair amount of spoilage, but we can, if we are trying to produce stuff and we have mash in here but not any nutrients, then we'll convert spoilage to nutrients. The one change that I made here was to how we were doing this before was I think we were looking at like either collecting spoilage, or if we didn't have sort of enough stuff that might spoil into spoilage, we would stick some extra nutrients that we're generating here because they decay pretty quickly into spoilage. But I also realized mash actually decays pretty quickly too, and so since we can produce mash without nutrients, I also save off some mash here. So that when it spoils, that's a way to bootstrap the spoilage without having to actually sort of like put spoilage in here to like kickstart it. So that was sort of like a nice little upgrade here. Otherwise, these assembly machines have productivity in them so that we generate seeds as usual. Then we have a build for bioflux because we need that for the rocket fuel. Although we are not using it to generate nutrients. I decided that it was just easier to and this is actually enough. This biochamber is enough to provide all of the nutrients that we need, which you can see because we have nutrients coming back around on this loop here. And so these are set up to generate the bioflux, which come down here. And then we have jelly production and rocket fuel production here. As well, we have circuit logic so that we're not producing rocket fuel unless we need it, which is being driven by how much do we have stored up in this box. And I think we're looking to have, 800. I think that's the 4 rows in this box here. That if we fall below that, that's what we're doing. And then here, these are I have 18. I have 18 heating towers because actually with the rocket fuel productivity that we have, this thing plus 90%, we can produce a lot. This is meant to be in sort of steady state, enough to consume a full half belt of jelly nuts, and which means this one ag tower could just be going sort of flat out, and these set of machines are enough to consume all the jelly nuts, which is something that we want so that we can build up the seeds here. So in general, each of these things we're looking here, we're reading both the fuel and the temperature, and we have a combinator here that says if the temperature here falls below 900 and we don't already have 2 rocket fuel in there burning, then like go stick some rocket fuel in them. So these are only going to actually burn the rocket fuel as needed to restore temperature for power generation. So each pair of heating towers can manage 8 heat exchangers. I have heating pipe that goes all the way down here, so they're also all connected to each other. And then the 8 heat exchangers together can power 14 steam turbines. So that's actually the right ratio. It's 4 to 7. So this is actually built to ratio. And this whole thing, I think, can generate 750 megawatts. So that is good stuff. And then we connect it to the main base grid here. But as you can see, again, it's the part that generates the power is disconnected from the part that sort of transmits the power. I don't know. There's an air gap here, right? So like, this is the base can draw on the stuff generated out of these steam turbines, but like we're generating steam to give the steam turbines using the sort of bootstrap jelly power. And so this should be good. So this should not brown out, and this should just continue running as long as we need power. I have things set up so that we stop making the rocket fuel if we get enough stuff here. All of these machines are set up so that they just always process any fruit that shows up. Again, for sort of seed purposes, we don't want seeds to spoil here, and so that's the same for these. As a result, we also have to we end up generating some like extra mash here, where this is controlled. So if we're basically not trying to make, in this case, bioflux, which we do need the mash for, then is that what this says? No, I have separate ones. So if I don't need the mash for like whatever this stuff has going on, I'm gonna go stick it on here, and so that on the outside belt here, there's a couple things. One, we're picking off any seeds, jelly nut seeds, to send them back for further planting if they show up. And then we just have a heating tower that's clearing spoilage and jelly and mash and stuff here. So, and another one over here so that we can, again, this outer belt is where we like put stuff to dispose of it. It is a little tricky. We generate a lot of jelly down here, so it's a little tricky to keep this clear, but seems to be working. We have some more jelly nuts coming, so that's fine. And we did manage to save up like a lot of jelly nut seeds here, so that's good. And part of that is because we have like much higher productivity on all of these guys here, have plus 50% productivity, so we generate seeds like very rapidly compared to how fast we consume them. And whereas these are much slower, these are only +8. And we don't need to consume sort of full belts, so this is also has some circuits here so that we're actually looking at how many Yamakos we have on this belt to decide if we want to actually put some more on here and be active. So there's this logic here, right? It says if somebody's asking for Yamakos and we don't have very many on the belt, then like you should activate the agricultural tower. So that's how that's working. And then in addition, we're looking to try to save up seeds here as well. You can see it's going more slowly. I think that's due to a combination of we're not producing the Yamakos sort of flat out, and we have much lower productivity on the seed production here. We can also see this in the bootstrap jelly power, where like we're barely keeping up seed-wise here, and so we'll have to watch this over time. This should be fine. I think this should be fine. And if I really wanted to, I suppose I could actually even. I wonder if I could upgrade this. Let's try this. Let's put these 3s in. Because that should generate more seeds. It will slow this down a little bit, but I think not to the point that it, so 2.5 times 2.5 is 5, 6 something, so 6 megawatts worth, and again, we're still only using 1.5. So that should help us out with seed generation here, which this is a bad one to run out of seeds because this is what's providing the bootstrap power over here. So hopefully this lets us climb out of our, we have, you know, we're not in deficit yet. This guy is disabled. All of its squares are full except for this one, but we have more than the seeds that are needed for that. So I think this will help us sort of keep up here. So we'll just have to kind of like watch that over time. But this then I think should give us uninterruptible power. And you know, and again, it's like this sort of like what are my dependencies, right? So the main base is going to be partially dependent on this, but we don't need the main base power to generate this, right? Instead, this power generation is dependent on this thing here. And this thing here is not dependent on either the main base or the bootstrap jelly power. It's only dependent on the solar array, and the solar array is not dependent on anything. And so that sort of overall property means that, you know, we have, I guess you could call it like we've got separate fault domains. So if the main base runs out of power, like this won't run out of power, this won't run out of power. And even if we were oversubscribed to this, we'll still be able to produce some amount of power out of here. So we won't experience at least a death spiral in power. So I thought that was a useful property to have, and it was kind of fun to work out how to do it. So let's see, is there any other interesting logic here? I guess the main interesting bits are that we are looking at how many seeds we have, and we are saying if I don't have enough seeds stored up in the boxes at either end here, then that is a reason to go process some of the fruit. We can, as we've done in some of the other builds, we can see like what demands we have here. So you can see like a lot of times we don't actually need the jelly nut stuff, and so we're not sending it, which is actually fine. And so now we're generating the rocket fuel. We must have fallen below 800 in here, which we did. And so then that kicks these back on to like go make some, and they run for a little bit, and then this should go way back up over 800. So this just, you know, runs enough to sort of keep up. This definitely keeps up with the rocket fuel demands. I think that even if we were like feeding these heat towers full steam, they actually couldn't consume all of the rocket fuel that we're capable of producing up here. So, which is another nice property. It means that we'll always be able to sort of like do full power out of here if we need it. And so let's see. Let's go look at the demands. Yeah, and so now we're just trying to generate the generate the Yamako seeds, which therefore means that we need Yamakos. And so we're sending Yamakos through here. And I guess we could probably update the logic here a little bit. So this says, yes, this is the thing that's generating the demand. This is the thing that determines if we should put stuff on the belt. And so I think what we also want, or we are not trying to produce rocket fuel, and we're looking for Yamakos on the red wire. These are both on the red wire. So as long as we're not trying to produce rocket fuel, but we are trying to produce but we are trying to produce seeds. Maybe that's a better way to, maybe that's a better test. We want seeds, but we're not making rocket fuel. Then we should just run, because we just want to like We just want to process as much fruit as we can get. Although I don't know that these can all, that's a good question. Can these keep up? These consume 0.67 per second, but I have 6 of them. So this consumes 3 something. So this actually can't, actually we don't want to do this because we can't actually consume, we need to take this back off. We need to just stick with something like this. Because we can't, these machines can't actually process the fruit as fast as we could produce it, and so that could eventually lead to spoilage of the fruit, which is sort of like bad for seed generation. So we'll just have to be patient and just say, okay, we'll just keep sticking some on here and work, chewing our way through them, and as long as we're looking at that, as long as we've got a gap and sort of more fruit can fit on the whole belt than we're looking to have on it, which is the case, right? Even when this backs up here, we're going to have big gaps on the belt, and so as long as we do that, we'll be able to keep up with whatever we're producing, because it basically will, the ag tower will stop producing fruit, if we end up with a backlog here that these guys can't keep up with. So I'm pretty sure over time this is going to help us keep up. I'm not going to do the same trick with the higher tier productivity modules, because this is sized so that we can generate. I have just enough of these, and they go just fast enough that because we have the extra productivity, we can have sort of net positive seed generation, but this also produces enough mash so that when we're trying to make bioflux for the rocket fuel, we're generating enough mash. So if I added more productivity here, it makes these slower, and then we might not be able to produce enough mash for what we want. So I think we should be. I think this is fine, and we just need to be patient. But that's kind of the way to reason about this stuff. Okay, this is almost full of seeds in here anyway, so that seems like a good deal. Have we made any further progress here? Oh yeah, we're up to 6 seeds here with the higher productivity. So, okay, so now I really do feel like this is going to be sort of pretty stable power for us, which is good to know. And like to some degree, this is an interesting thing to think about as a way to bootstrap power in general on Gleba, but it really only makes sense to do it once we can generate the rocket fuel from jelly. So we kind of have to get like some amount of ag science going before we have this style of power production available to us. But then once we do, then this is like super efficient. This is basically, one ag tower of each fruit producing, enough for like 750 megawatts, which is like a fair amount of power. Now some of that is because, we're getting the rocket fuel productivity, which is almost double. But even if we ended up with 350 megawatts out of a build like this, it only goes up. The amount of power we can produce goes up as the rocket fuel productivity increases, without having to like grow any more trees or scale any more ag towers. So I thought this was useful just as a little side episode to go over how this works. And so far this has been running for a fair amount of time without clogging. And so, here we can see the backlog of jelly that these generate here. And it is very important that we are pulling off the final belt segment, right? That this last machine can see all of the jelly nuts. So as long as, and so hopefully we can then process them all before they spoil, which should be the case. Like these are barely spoiled here. And same thing over here. I'm using inserters to grab stuff that maybe is spoiled off the ends, just because like splitters have weird ways of like getting stuff stuck in like the other half of them when there's filters and things like that. So So we're trying to avoid doing that, but like as you can see, we just consumed all of the jelly nuts. Although I guess we need some more seeds, so we must. Yeah, we've got another batch coming. So okay, good stuff. So I think we're gonna call that just a little quick episode. I still have to finish doing the quality Yamako fruit build over here, although it's going to work very similarly to this one. As we said before, we'll have a little bioflux train to sort of come over here. I've got the train network set up already, etc. I will say the one thing that I did just for convenience sake, because I was like, you know what, like we're like almost out of stone down here. We have like tons of landfill, but we're about to mine out the one piece of stone that we have, and I was like, you know what, like I was trying to work out like where's there more stone, and like there is a bunch down here, and I was like, do I want to build little outposts or extend the base down to them? And I was like, I was like too lazy. I didn't really want to do it. So instead, what I did was I just said, you know what, I'm gonna import stone and stone bricks from Vulcanus, where we can basically produce them pretty much for free as byproducts from sort of lava generation. So that seemed like a good deal. What did we also do? I also tried to scale up the production of synthetic coal. And then I also realized that this is our biosulfur, and we were only using the biosulfur for the sulfuric acid. So I was running out of sulfur for coal somehow. Maybe I'm producing it somewhere else, but I was like, you know what? Like, well, I'll just stick some in a storage chest here. So that should all work fine. And in general, you know, yes, we're still generating power here, but it doesn't have to be the main power source here. Can now be primarily about, hey, I'm really just, you know, processing this stuff to get seeds back, and I just need a way to dispose of the jelly and mash that comes out. That's sort of the main point here, or the spoilage, and you know but as long as it's hot enough, like might as well like use it to generate power too. So we are doing that still down here as well, but and by the way, I also, as part of this, I was also like, you know what, like let me just make some rocket fuel power. So like I did a few of these, but then I was like, you know what, but these are dependent on having enough electricity to power the bots. It's dependent on being able to like generate the rocket fuel, you know, here, and this base has to run, and this base is dependent on like trains and stuff to get its fruit. And I was just like, you know what, like I'm not sure that, I mean, this generates extra power pretty quickly, and it's efficient because it runs off the rocket fuel, but I was like, but it's still dependent on itself, right? There's a circular dependency. This power generation is still dependent on sort of itself, because it's all connected to one thing. So that's what eventually led me to do this guy here, and so this should be pretty robust. So we may get some brownouts in terms of like being underpowered, if something weird is going on, but right now we're in good shape. We're generating 1.5 gigawatts available to us. We're still calling for, I think especially on this side, we're still, these guys are still, if the temperature falls, what are we looking at, below 750, and then we're gonna just like process some jelly just to like get these back up to temperature. So this is sort of like a bigger version of this like jelly bootstrap, I guess, is one way of looking at it, but there's a lot more steps in between than there are here. So anyway, this is sort of like part of the engineering here, is trying to figure out how to how to kind of make things independent so that they, the simpler they are and the fewer things you depend on, the less likely things are to break. And in this case, because, we've actually separated this out, we should always have like 750 megawatts of power production available, even if something else happened with, for some reason, this stuff all got cold, and then like we couldn't make this stuff work, or we couldn't make the trains work, and I was trying to drive the like inserters off of the solar, and then I was like, oh well, then I need to like get some solar up here, which I guess I did, but but then it's like, okay, but those are not, I can't power this stuff to like do the seeds, so it's like this is not going to work. So so that's how we ended up where we are. But okay. We'll get back to business of quality science on Gleba here. Next episode. I will, when we come back, I'm fairly certain I'll have this hooked up unless I discover some other side quest, which is an interesting procrastination. So anyway, that's what we have for today. So as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, bye.